Update. Am I the a-hole for telling my fiancé my stepdaughter isn't mine? Sort it yourself? Original post. I'm a 27-year-old man and my fiancé is 30. We've been together for nearly 4 years. I have a 6-year-old son and she has an 11-year-old daughter from previous relationships. Up until now, we've never had any issues regarding the children. Yesterday, her daughter was set to go on a camping trip for a friend's birthday where they'd be doing activities like kayaking. My fiancé dressed her in a dress, and I mentioned to her that it didn't seem like the right choice for the occasion. She seemed offended and said her daughter could wear whatever she liked and that it wasn't a man's place to judge. I tried to clarify what I meant, but she cut me off, saying, "She's my daughter, not yours." I took my son to a pre-planned match when my fiancé rang me. It turned out the birthday girl's mom had told her daughter she couldn't go in a dress and needed to wear a tracksuit or something similar, so they didn't let her on the bus. My fiancé then asked if I could leave the match early to drive her daughter to the activity center. I replied, "Why should I? She's not my daughter and I'm here with my son." Neither of us are talking now. I do pity my stepdaughter and I wasn't being spiteful. My son was looking forward to it and it would be about 4 hours of travel. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Who sends a girl kayaking in a dress? Someone who's clearly never been kayaking. I've never been kayaking either, but common sense still tells me that a child in a dress is wildly inappropriate for the activity. Not the a-hole. Lol, you try to help her and she told you to butt out. Make sure to get an apology. Yeah, I'd say I'll be waiting for an apology. Dollars to donuts, you'll be waiting for a while. I'm gonna say this just in case. While waiting, be sure to spend time with your stepdaughter. Don't let her get caught in the middle between you and her mom butting heads. Regardless of who's the a-hole, she doesn't need this. Yeah, I'm taking her and my son to the camp next weekend instead. We won't do the camping part, but we'll do the activities. That's of course if I'm allowed to take her. My fiancé is obviously invited too, but only if she wears a dress. I'm joking. Not the a-hole. She can't be a snarky person and still expect you to help. She made her choice and choices have consequences. This relationship isn't lasting much longer, lol. And good, she sounds like a red flag. Yeah, I didn't want to sound like a drama queen, but I'm very surprised what she said and questioning some stuff. I see my stepdaughter as my daughter and would have expected the same with her and my son. I'm not saying I don't have a favorite child, but I love them both. Edit? From what I gather, I was a bit of an a-hole, and she was a bigger a-hole, so I'm going to try and talk it out and see what we both want. Now for the update. I had a conversation with my fiancé, and she asked why would I say something hurtful. I replied that I was just repeating what she said to me earlier. Then she asked if I loved her daughter, and I said I did. She asked if it was as much as I loved my son, and I responded, almost as much. She got cranky, so I asked her if she loved my son. She said no. I asked if she loved me, and her answer was sort of. She started crying, woke up her daughter, and told her they had to leave, though I hadn't told them to go. I said we could talk about it tomorrow, but she insisted, saying he doesn't want us anymore. I told her that I never said that. Her daughter began crying and didn't want to leave, but her mother said, "Don't make me leave on my own. He doesn't want you." I reassured them both that they were welcome to stay. My fiancé decided to leave without her daughter, and now she's not answering. When I spoke to my fiancé's daughter's father, he just laughed and said she couldn't even hold off on a crazy until after the wedding. That poor 11-year-old girl. This won't be the last time she has her life uprooted by her unstable mother. That poor girl deserves stability, not drama. I hope she finds a way to cope with all of this chaos. And you never noticed anything beforehand leading up to you proposing to this person that she's an absolute nut job? What's the go, OP? I genuinely didn't. My son loves her. Some people pointed out her picking her daughter's clothes was weird, but I never really thought about it. I had a mother like that, a similar level of crazy. Mine did some wild stuff. Best you can do is assure the girl you'll be there for her no matter what. Chances are you love that girl more than her mother does. That was my experience. My stepdad cares more about me than my mother does. Bio dad is dead, so not much choice with him. They're getting a divorce now that I'm an adult, and he's keeping me in the divorce. I'm glad you had him at least, and sorry about your bio dad. She's always welcome at mine. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend Thanksgiving dinner because my wife keeps siding with her parents over me? My wife and I have been married for 5 years, and while I love her deeply, there's an issue that's causing a lot of strain in our relationship. Her parents are very involved in our lives, and they tend to voice their opinions on everything, from how we spend our money to how we should be raising our kids. We have two. I'm not close with my own family, so I always hoped my in-laws would feel like family to me. Instead, it feels like they criticize every decision I make, and my wife doesn't defend me. Whenever they make a comment about my job or our parenting choices, she just sits there or, worse, agrees with them. Last week, her dad made a dig about my job, saying something like, "If you worked harder, maybe you could afford a better home for the kids." My wife just laughed it off, and I felt humiliated. I later told her how much that hurt, but she brushed it off, saying that's just how they are. I told her I don't want to attend Thanksgiving at her place if I'm going to be treated this way, but she says I'm overreacting and making things difficult for her. Am I in the wrong for wanting to skip Thanksgiving if it means avoiding more of their disrespect, especially when my wife won't back me up? Dude, if you don't stand your ground now, later will be too late. Let's face it, there are expectations from you, and unless you are respected even if you provide everything later, it can be called as not man enough. Thanks, I think you're right. It's about setting boundaries now before things get worse. I need to make sure I'm respected in my own family. 100% not the a-hole. If my father-in-law insulted me at my job to my face in front of my wife and she laughed about it, I'd say there are several a-holes here and none of them is you. At best, he's an insensitive jerk. At worst, he's a grade A-hole. What kind of man behaves that way? She's behaving really badly for not defending you in front of him. Not going to Thanksgiving? Heck, I would not only never go to their house again, I would forbid them from entering mine. And you need to consider if your wife really has your best interests at heart. That's exactly how I feel. It's one thing to be criticized, but it's worse when my wife doesn't back me up. I really need to figure out where her loyalty lies. Your wife is the #1 problem here. If she's not in your side, who is? This is her family. She should be dealing with them on this. Instead, she's dismissing you. Exactly. It hurts that she won't stand up for me. Next story. Am I in the wrong for telling my ex-husband that our kids are justified in feeling like they don't have a father? I'm 33 and have 2 kids, 12 and 8. I divorced their dad when I discovered he was cheating on me with a mom from our younger son's school group. Despite that betrayal, I agreed to shared custody because I wanted my kids to grow up with their father in their lives. However, since the divorce, he's only been around when he's picking them up for visits. He often goes out with his stepchildren, but rarely includes our kids, claiming those outings are spur of the moment and can't always include them. Eventually, I stopped pushing, but I've always thought it was unfair that he keeps his distance from our children's lives. Recently, I decided to upgrade my older son's computer, and he asked if we could give his old one to his cousin, my brother's son. My brother has been a huge support for my kids. He's always available to take them to their school events when I can't, and often takes them out to the park or on trips when I'm busy. My ex, on the other hand, is rarely available for them. Anytime I ask him to help with an activity, he has an excuse. He's out of town or swamped with work. Ironically though, whenever his stepkids need something, he's there. Once he even argued with his stepkid's father at a school event, insisting he had a right to be there. When my ex found out I gave the computer to my nephew, he got upset. He complained that if I had money to spare on a gift like that, I should have forgiven 2 months of child support he'd missed, since his finances were tight with a new baby. He added that if I could give away a computer, I should have gifted it to either his kids or his stepkids, who shared just one computer among the 3 of them. I told him my finances were none of his business, and that I owed nothing to his stepchildren. Then his wife jumped into the conversation, accusing me of spoiling my son by giving him a new computer and of being petty for letting my son bring it to their house, claiming it was just to show off in front of his step-siblings. I told her she had no right to speak to me that way or question my decisions. I added that I allow my kids to see their father so they can grow up with him in their lives, not so she can interfere with how I parent. My ex was offended, but I told him this whole situation could have been avoided if his wife hadn't inserted herself where she doesn't belong. After that, things seemed to calm down until last week. I went to pick up the kids, and my ex was visibly upset. He explained that he'd tried reading a bedtime story to our youngest. At home, he still likes to be read to before bed, usually by me, his brother or my brother. And when none of us are around, he listens to audiobooks. Apparently, my ex wanted to make an effort to connect, so he offered to read to him, but our son turned him down, saying he didn't need him for that because he could do it himself. My ex stayed to listen as he searched for a story for 8-year-olds without a dad on his tablet, and it hit him hard. The next day, my ex offered to take our older son to basketball practice, but he replied that he'd be going with his dad. He quickly corrected himself and said, "Uncle." That made my ex even angrier, and when I came to pick up the kids, he confronted me about it. I told him that if our kids feel like they don't have a father, he has only himself to blame. He tried to shift the blame onto me, saying I was the one pushing him away from his role. I told him it's up to him to show up for his kids. It's not something I can do for him. I reminded him he was the one who broke our family and has chosen to be more involved with his stepkids than with his own children. I told him not to kid himself. The kids are growing up, and they're starting to see the reality of who he is as a father. If he keeps this up, he can't expect much from them in the future. After that exchange, his mom called me. While she's always been polite to me, I felt the need to say that I would have appreciated this same concern from her when she supported her son's affair, knowing her grandchildren were losing their father in the process. She hung up, and we haven't spoken since. My brother advised me that I had every right to express how I feel, but he suggested that maybe this discussion shouldn't have happened in front of the kids. Later, my ex texted me saying that if I weren't so difficult, he'd spend more time with them. I told him his duty as a father doesn't depend on whether I'm easy or not, and he knows I've never prevented him from seeing the kids. The truth is, when he has to choose, he prefers outings with his stepkids over his own children, and that's something only he can change. Now for the top comments. You can only do so much, OP, and don't let him off the hook for any child support. The fact that it's stretching his budget is a him problem, not a you problem. And I agree with your brother that that conversation should have not happened in front of the kids. But if I understand correctly, your ex chose the time and place, not giving you much choice in the matter. Not the a-hole. I love how if she had extra money, she should forgive child support. But him already knowing money was tight wasn't a reason to not have another kid. My ex stayed to listen as he searched for a story for 8-year-olds without a dad on his tablet. Your kid is ruthless. Good for him. Not the a-hole. 8-year-olds can be ruthless. They seriously don't hold back. They understand so much more at that age. Last story. Am I the a-hole for returning my stepson's belongings to his mother's house? I, 35 female, have known my fiancé, 41 female, for 7 years. We have 2 ours children, 4 male and 1 female. And my fiancé has a son, 10 male, from his previous marriage. I met his son, whom I call my stepson even though we are not technically married, when he was 4. Since I've been around, my fiancé and his ex have used a simple strategy to send my stepson's belongings back and forth between the 2 houses. The fiancé used to pack a backpack with anything that his son needed for the next few days. School supplies, sports gear, clothing, and drop it off with his son at school. His ex would pick up their son, keep anything that belonged at her house, and return anything that belonged to us on the next drop-off day. Easy. Over the years, my stepson's mother has sent disparaging texts accusing us of keeping the clothing she buys for him at our house for too long. She says he never has enough clothes there and wants us to send everything back as soon as possible, even if it's not clean yet. My fiancé has refused to acknowledge her request, so usually the task falls on my shoulders. I wash laundry religiously and make sure to pack and label a bag with all of the clothing she has requested, placing it in my stepson's backpack. I usually ask my stepson to make sure he takes the clothing out of his backpack when he returns to his mother's house because she forgets to check his backpack. Today, both my stepson and my 4-year-old had basketball practice at the YMCA. My stepson was scheduled to be with his mother for the weekend, but on Saturdays she always bring him up to the wife for a few hours so he can play, and then he goes back to her place. On our way out, I grabbed a jacket my stepson had left behind. It belonged to his mother's house. Since we were going to see him, I thought it would be easier to return it now. I also figured he would show up to the gym without a coat on a cold day, as his mother rarely dresses him appropriately for the weather. When we, fiancé, me, our 2 kids, got into the car, my fiancé saw me holding the jacket and lost it on me. He tore into me about how I was immature, petty, and rude for sending all of his son's clothing away from our house. He said I have been doing it for years, because I hate to see anything at our house that my stepson's mother has bought. He said I was making our stepson feel like he wasn't welcome in our home, and that it was an unfair burden for a 10-year-old to have to make sure all of his belongings are returned to their prospective houses several times per week. I actually agree with that last point. I've been saying for years this schlepping feels unfair to the boy. I told my fiancé he was the a-hole for blowing up on me in front of our kids. I told him that if I was the a-hole, then he and his ex were too, because I was just following a system they started. I told him it was way too easy for him to see me in a negative light instead of becoming curious about why I was so adamant about returning his son's belongings quickly. I also told him that he was now solely responsible for managing his son's belongings because I didn't need the drama tied to it. And I didn't need to be unfairly painted as a wicked stepmother. Oh, and my stepson definitely showed up to the Y without a coat. He was cold. He also let us know the coat I grabbed was actually his mother's. She'd let him borrow it, but wanted it back because her new husband had just gifted it to her recently. I'm struggling to see how I'm the a-hole. Am I? Both my fiancé and his ex have called me the a-hole for many reasons since I've been in this relationship. Help, please. I understand why she divorced him. He sucks. He's negligent, abandons his responsibilities, and when you angelically try to pick up the slack, he berates you with an ungodly temper. Not a-hole. My ex-sister-in-law would send the kids to their dad without any appropriate clothes, so we were always buying them new coats. But she had terrorized them about their things that would freak out if my brother tried to keep any of them at his house. He was paying a lot of child support and alimony, so she was not scraping by. She was just being vindictive.